What's up, everybody, and welcome back to On the Brick Road again. It's me, your host, Kyle, and I'm, in fact, on a road. Now, is this road made out of bricks? No, it is not. In fact, if it was made out of Lego bricks, it would probably hold up better than how it is currently being held up, because, dang, it's full of doggone potholes. Depending on where you are, you may not have to deal with this, but considering the state I live in, let me tell you, there's a lot of potholes. Don't get me wrong, I love my state. I think it is a little chef's kiss. But wow, the potholes. But anyways, that aside, today we have a topic that I'm going to be honest, maybe I've talked about before, and I've posted a video about this before, and I just can't remember it, which is funny because I haven't been doing this that long. But if I have, oh well, whatever, I guess. I want to talk about it again because I was really thinking about it recently. And let me explain. You see, Lego is releasing a X-Wing versus TIE Fighter set. And this set is going to come, shockingly, with an X-Wing. And that X-Wing has a pilot and a droid. And that got me thinking because I was looking at my current selection of pilots and droids, and I was just kind of like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. I got a good selection of pilots and droids, I like these guys. And I'm looking at them, and I have totally modified some. Like, I've totally changed them. And in fact, I plan on further changing some of them. And so I kind of wanted to talk about the process that I go through of deciding in my mind what is an okay thing to modify, because I'm very particular about that. I'm very particular. And as I say this, I realize I have talked about this before, but specifically I wanted to focus on pilots today, and I wanted to kind of make the case of why it's okay to modify your pilots in the way that I've modified them, just because it's almost logical, and it's in line with Lego, if that makes sense. And if you're confused, don't worry, I'm confused as well most of the time with the things I said. So, bear with me. But essentially, I have always loved to collect Rebel pilots. And I think that has been a mixture of, I love the I love the look. I think the look is pretty cool, and I like the different helmets. I like that it's a uniform type of troop. They all have this orange jumpsuit, but then they have their own unique helmets that identify them. I always thought that was a very cool concept. And of course, there are other pilots that wear the traditional X-Wing helmet. I say X-Wing helmet in quotations. There is the Blue Squadron pilots that wear blue uniforms. There is Captain Porter, I believe was his name. He just came out in the E-Wing, and he wears that type of helmet. There's the two pilots in gray jumpsuits that wear that type of helmet. They came in the Sand Speeder. Criminally underrated set, I think. And you know what? A little side tangent about that. That's just such a random set, but I think the Sand Speeder looks so freaking good. And the two pilots included, the gray jumpsuits are maybe my favorite jumpsuit, honestly. I think that's just a great look. I think they just look very clean, and the two helmets included were also super sick. One of them even had a different base color. Most helmets are just white with printing. This one was garnet with printing, though. And I don't know, very underrated set. I picked it up years after it retired, and I barely paid more than market price. I was shocked. And I guess I get why it isn't a super sought after set, but I don't know. I thought it was a really good set. It came with a super nice moisture farm piece, which is great for anyone that wants to do a desert planet, specifically Tatooine. I don't know. Anyways, I digress. Go get that set if you haven't got it, I would say. And but anyways, back on the matter at hand. So when it comes to pilots, they have changed the the uniform of the pilots. Really, I'm going to say 3 major times, and we're kind of in we're in a 4th stage now. And also there's kind of like technically there's 5. I'll explain. So the first pilots that came out, they looked rough. They were back out there, and I can't remember if they pushed them in 99 or if they waited till like 2000 to release the first like X-Wing pilot. But they looked rough. They were looking rough. The helmet mold is the exact same as the one we have today, but the printing was much less. And the real kicker is no leg printing, and the chest printing was really bad. And then a new pilot minifigure came out, and this is the one that I primarily grew up on, I feel like. And this one had an updated chest printing that looked significantly better. Just much better, much more detailed, but still no leg printing. And the face print, now they had a visor on the face print, but it was not the best. So, that was kind of like it's better, acceptable. And then they came out with a new type of printing, and they kind of came out with 2 at the same time. One of them, both of them had leg printing, and both of them had a updated face print with a visor that was the same. So the visor was the same, and they both had leg printing, but the printing on the legs and the printing on the chest was a bit different. And one of these versions was specifically for snow speeders, and so there was a little less printing specifically on the legs, and they had white hands instead of black hands. And then there was another version for X-Wings, Y-Wings pilots, and it had black hands, and there was more printing, and there was printing on the legs. And this is a modern version, right? And I consider this is modern enough that it can mix with the newest version that just came out, because the newest version that has come out has black hands, it has leg printing, it has chest printing, but the leg chest printing is slightly different. Just a few different colors moved around, a few extra details, and then the tubing is different. And then also the visor piece is different on the head print. But the visor printing and the chest printing isn't different enough to warrant being oh well, if you use the old ones, you can't use them. It's they mesh really well together. In fact, it just kind of looks like you have pilots that have arranged their tubing differently, which makes it a bit more realistic, I think. So overall, I think it's fantastic. Both of these new ones, and I use both of them. So I have a pretty large chunk of Rebel pilots, and 2 of them have this new style printing. It's the 2 pilots that came in the Yavin 4 base, so Gold Leader and Red Leader. And then all my other pilots that I have for X-Wings and Y-Wings, they're using the printing that came before this. And the reason I got so many of them is I have gotten a couple different microfighters of the X-Wing, and they had that new printing. And I also still use the printing that was kind of more specific to the Hoth variant. I still use that for my snow speeder pilots as well. So I have 3 different pilots in orange jumpsuits, but I think they all are modern enough to fit in. If I put in one of the older pilots that didn't have leg printing, they would really stick out, so I don't use those anymore. But because I don't use those guys anymore, there's a lot of cool helmets that came on those guys that have been kicked to the curb, essentially. And it's well, that kind of sucks. I mean, these are cool looking dudes. And so what I have started to do is, if there is a unique and cool helmet on a old pilot minifigure, I will just take that helmet and I will buy a duplicate of a cheap modern pilot, and I'll swap out the helmets, and boom, it's like I have a completely new pilot. And just to give a few examples of what I've done, there's an old pilot that came out in an advent calendar who had an all-white helmet, And so I've put that old white helmet on a modern minifigure because I look at that and I'm like, oh wow, this looks like almost like a pilot in training, if you will. This looks like a new, like fresh out of training kind of pilot. He hasn't gotten any markers on his helmet yet. You know, he hasn't earned them. I think that's cool. I've done very similar things with, there's a pilot that came in a snow speeder, and it was an older pilot, and he had just some gray coloring on his helmet. I took that helmet. The old Gold Leader had a helmet that had gray checkering on it, as opposed to gold checkering. I think that's a great helmet, and it looks completely different from the modern Gold Leader helmet. So I totally changed that junk up. I put it on a new pilot. And even some of the older stuff, like I've taken the original Gold Leader's helmet and I've put that on a modern pilot. And it's slightly less detailed, the helmet printing is, but not enough for me to be like, oh, I don't want to use it, because it still looks pretty decent. The old pilot helmets really have not aged poorly, I would say. So I think that's perfectly fine to do, because that increases your Rebel pilot army, I guess you could say. It gives you more variety. And I've also done this in different ways as well. For example, I have a few different Blue Squadron pilots, and listen, they only came with 2 unique helmets, 3 if you include Anton Merrick. And I have 6 of these pilots, I have 5 of them. So in order not to have duplicates, I have taken helmets from other guys and I've added them onto here. So, and I think that's perfectly fine. The old Gold Leader helmet that's gray, so kind of the one that came out in the middle, because there's been 3 Gold Leader helmets made. The one in the middle, I made that onto a Blue Squadron pilot, and I think it looks really good. The gray and the blue, fantastic. So yeah, and I think that's totally fine to do, because I think, again, you're just kind of beefing up your army. You're just getting some more unique troops in, unique pilots, I should say. And that's just really, it's fun to do that. You want to increase your numbers of pilots. And this goes a bit further, because I have moved my pilots around definitely. Give a prime example. My Blue Squadron pilots, they came in Y-Wing sets because LEGO wanted to make Y-Wings, but they also wanted to make the new Blue Squadron pilots. That doesn't make sense because Blue Squadron did U-Wings and X-Wings. But, so I've moved my Blue Squadron pilots. I don't have them in Y-Wings anymore because that wouldn't really make sense. And so, I bought the Rogue One Y-Wing when it first came out, which is fantastic set. All the Rogue One sets are amazing. My favorite LEGO wave, without a shadow of a doubt. Maybe I'll talk about that one day. That's why it's the best. Actually about to try and pick up a poly bag that I totally forgot about, to try and complete my collection, if you will. Maybe after I buy that, I'll talk about it. A little side tangent there. But anyways, yeah, so I took the Blue Squadron pilot out of the Y-Wing set, and I put in just some generic orange jumpsuit pilot. I can't even remember her name. I just put one in there because I was like, okay, well, that works. And then fast forward several years later, and I got the Yavin 4 base. And the Yavin 4 base came with Gold Leader. And I was like, oh, hey, it's Gold Leader. But Gold Leader in this set was in a very tiny little Y-Wing. And I don't know, I just kind of felt like that was wrong. So I swapped him and put him in the Rogue One Y-Wing. And I took the random orange jumpsuit pilot out of that and put him in the tiny Y-Wing that came in the Yavin 4 set. And so by extension, I also swapped the droids because I wanted to put Gold Leader's astromech with him. And I think swapping the droids was totally fine. And I've added droids as well. I've taken like R5, the red domed astromech that you see kind of like blow up in A New Hope. Like, I've taken him and I've slapped him in a Rebel fighter, because I'm just like, oh yeah, no, like, that makes sense. He was in The Mandalorian, he's with the Rebels, so, I want to slap him in there. And yeah, and I think that's totally fine to do, is just kind of like, add some droids as needed, mix it up so you have different droids even. Like, I think that's perfectly fine. I don't think that's that big of a deal. So yeah, and that's pretty much the gist of things that I have done with these various pilots and astromechs. And so, I don't know. I think it's totally fine to switch out the helmets to make more unique pilots. I think it's fine to switch pilots to different ships that make more sense for them to be piloting. I think it's fine to switch out astromechs, give this guy this astromech, give this guy that astromech, put them in different ships than they came in. And I even think, like, something that I enjoy immensely with LEGO is I really enjoy getting to buy different sets from different years and seeing how they mesh. Like, I love it when I buy a set and then years later I buy a different set and I'm like, oh my gosh, these sets like mesh really well. And maybe it's just because I'm swapping out some minifigures. But hey, to me that's a really cool like little thing. Because I don't know, I just enjoy that. I enjoy getting to kind of like, be like, oh, I'm gonna change out the minifigures in this. I'm just gonna see how this works. So I definitely have done that a number of times, where I'm just like, oh, I bought this set, but this minifigure really goes with a different set. Like, I bought Darth Vader's castle and the pilot minifigure, transport pilot minifigure in blue. I put him in the Marauder set from The Mandalorian, because I was like, you know what? It makes a lot of sense for him to be the pilot of this transport. And I was like, he came in a set without a transport ship for him to pilot, so I just kind of had him. I'm like, I don't know, what is he going to do? Like, what do I do with this guy? Because he has nothing to pilot. And then, boom, the armored Marauder transport came out with no pilot. I'm like, well, there you go. That's what he's going to pilot. So I love it when stuff meshes like that. So yeah. Now, there's one other thing, though, that I have not mentioned, and that's because I haven't done it yet, but I am planning on doing it. And that is, I am going to buy 2 pilot Luke Skywalker keychains, and I'm going to pop the legs and arms off, and I'm going to put those legs and arms on the 2 pilots, Gold Leader and Red Leader, that came out in the Yavin 4 base. And this, I just see purely as upgrading. Because essentially, the printing of the UCS Rebel pilot Luke Skywalker, the arm printing, or the chest printing, and the hip printing, I believe, is it hip printing? I think it's hip printing. Basically, it's the exact same as the pilots that came out in the Yavin set. It's just he got arm printing and leg printing. But if you buy the keychain, you can pop the arms and legs off, and you can just put those on Gold Leader and Red Leader, and then boom, you have a UCS level pilot minifigure. And LEGO has already made a minifigure just like this, so it makes sense if all of the pilots were like this. So I don't see this as some great, like, change realistically. I think this is pretty natural. I think it makes sense, honestly, and I'm totally fine with doing it. I think this is a Rebel equivalent of, like, taking an Imperial officer that didn't have dual molded legs and giving him dual molded legs. Because it's like, LEGO has done it for Imperial officers. They just haven't done it for all of them. So I think it's okay for doing it for all of them. So I totally plan on doing that for those 2 pilots, just to give them a bit more of an upgrade, make them a bit more spiffy. And in the same vein, I'm thinking about doing it on a bit of a larger scale. I'm thinking about buying a Luke Skywalker mech. Not because I really want one, but because I could get the pilot minifigure. The pilot minifigure has the updated printing. I could then use that updated printing for a minifigure of my choice, basically. So, whatever minifigure I wanted, most likely I would probably do Biggs Darklighter because he has this big goofy helmet, and I'm hoping if I give him dual molded legs and arm printing, it'll kind of offset the big goofy helmet. So I may like switch out the torso and put his head and helmet on the new updated torso, and then buy another keychain and put some arm printing and leg printing on him, just to give him a bit more of a spiffier look. Hopefully, upgrade him some. And like, I don't know. I think that would look pretty nice. Yeah. And that's not official. Lego did not officially do this, but I think it's like okay, well, this is like the natural order. If Lego had upgraded in time, this is how this guy would look, kind of good. But anyways, that is my humble opinions on modifying Rebel pilots. I think it's a fun thing to do. I think it's fun to kind of see how your Rebel pilot units grow. I guess technically, this can extend. I'm trying to think. Really, this only works for the pilots that have the X-Wing style helmet. So unfortunately, there isn't too much you can do outside of that realm. There's probably are different things you can do. Like, there's a B-Wing pilot that came out in a Planet set. Those were a long time ago. Actually, he's kind of hard to get your hands on nowadays, which is funny because he's just a generic pilot. And really, if you wanted to, you could buy like 3 of these guys and just switch out the face, because it's like just a plain face. And then boom, you have 3 different B-Wing pilots. Because the helmet is very generic. It's just like one of the old school brown helmets that has like a clip piece for like goggles or like a visor, and then it has like a neon green visor. So it's kind of a weird, doesn't look so hot, honestly. But like it's kind of oddly appealing. So I don't know. Anyways, you could totally do that though if you wanted to make like unique B-Wing pilots, I guess. But yeah, so anyways, I digress about that. You know what? While I'm talking about Rebel pilots, the helmets, the big goofy helmets they made, and they only made them in one set. They made one for Luke Skywalker, one for Biggs Darklighter. I, oddly enough, don't think they were terrible from certain angles. If you look at them head on, they look kind of bad. But if you look at the helmet from like the top left or top right, like looking down at an angle at it, it looks so amazing. But from head on, they look kind of rough. I think they need to add a bit more shaping to make them look right from head on. But yeah, so it's not terrible. I think it was a cool idea. I like the premise, but yeah, perhaps they could have done a bit better with that. I don't know. They weren't as bad as the goofy Stormtrooper helmets, though. I'll give it that. So I don't know. They're a little big though, so it's hard to fit them into certain cockpits. So that's kind of like you got to redesign everything if you're going to like use these helmets continuously. And Lego did not want to do that, I imagine. And I think they thought the reception of these helmets was bad as well, and everything just kind of came to a head. But they're like, we're going to stop this. But for some reason, they didn't stop the new Stormtrooper helmet. It was very disappointing. But yeah. Anyways, justice for my boy Biggs Darklighter. He deserves a minifigure that does not have the goofy giant helmet, because they've only made him twice, really. Technically, they made him 3 times because they included him in like a book without a helmet and just a hairpiece, but I'm not going to count that one. They've only made him twice. They made him once with the absolute oldest X-Wing design, so it's like he was yellow when they made him, and then they make him again with a modern design, but then they give him this big old goofy helmet, and it's like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, was the issue the mustache? Did they not want to put a mustache and a visor on his printing? Because that doesn't really make sense, because, I don't know, you could totally do that. I don't know. Anyways, justice for Biggs Darklighter. Give him a normal a normal helmet and face with a visor printing. And you know what? Justice for Anton Merrick as well. Like, come on. They make a pilot minifigure of him. They give him his helmet. He's so cool. But then they don't give him a visor face print. So he looks wrong when you put his helmet on. It's like, dude, you put his helmet on, but he doesn't have a visor. Like, and he had a two-sided head, so you could have given him one side of his head with a visor, one side without, how they did with Captain Porter in the E-Wing set. Like, come on. But anyways, I digress. I'm just all grumpy about that because I think those are two kind of misses on cool pilots. Whatever. Anyways, there's my ranting. I know, very fun. I'm sure all of you have loved to hear this. You know, the ranting and the raving. But yeah, you know what? Maybe this is some stuff to consider. You know, next time you pick up a Rebel pilot, or hey, maybe go check that drawer that you keep all the old minifigures that you don't really want to display anymore, or some old sets, and check out some of those helmets. You know, Jet Porkins helmet, very cool, unique helmet. Only comes on an old pilot. Unfortunately, you know, you can't really get the unique face print on a modern pilot. But hey, you know, you could still use the helmet and just say it's not Jet Porkins. It's like, oh no, this is a different guy with a cool helmet. But anyways, just consider that. Maybe, who knows? Let me know if you decide to take up any of my advice and alter your Rebel pilots. Or hey, maybe you're completely a purist and you don't want to do anything that would change that, and that's totally fine too. You know what? You do you. But yeah, and I hope this video has been entertaining as always. It's definitely been entertaining for me. It's, you know, I feel like my drive has been significantly shorter than it is, which maybe to some aspects it is shorter because it is a minute till 8 in the morning. And usually I am just getting off the interstate right now, but I've been off the interstate for a hot minute. So hey, there you go. My drive's going by nice and fast. That's fun news. And on that note, I must leave you. I must depart. I know it's terrible. It's sad. You're probably crying. I would give you a tissue and pat you on the back if I could. But it's going to be okay. You know, deep breaths. We'll live. You'll survive without me somehow. I don't know how, but you'll go on. You'll do better things. You go on and live without me. But yeah, have a great rest of your day. Stay positive. Do some awesome stuff for people.